So let's talk about a really powerful modern parable. It asks a question that I think hits home for a lot of us today. What happens when the hero you create, the version of yourself you show the world, becomes more real than you are? This is the parable of the dreamer, a story from the Mirror Mask all about creation, identity, and this really surprising fall that leads to finding your actual true self.
Okay, so picture this. The story kicks off inside this huge, grand cathedral. There's a priest, and he's about to tell the last of 3 parables. But as he starts to speak, the whole place begins to transform. The shadows literally stretch upwards, turning the stone and glass into this towering, impossible city. It's an incredible stage for the story he's about to tell, the story of the dreamer.
The priest lays out these 3 different ways of dealing with what he calls the uncanny. You know, that creepy shiver-down-your-spine feeling you get from things that are almost human, but just not quite right. The first path, the artisans, goes inward and down. The second path, the wanderers, goes sideways. But the dreamer's path, his is all about going one direction, up. And the dreamer's whole philosophy is wrapped up in one word, Excelsior, ever upward. His plan isn't to walk through that creepy, uncanny valley or get lost in it. No, his plan is to build something so heroic, so bright, that he can just soar right over it. He wants to create an ideal that completely eclipses all that weirdness down below. Now this is where the dreamer's real genius comes in. See, his heroes aren't these flawless, perfect beings. He gets something profound. That the wound and the power are really the same thing, just seen from a different angle. The very thing that makes his heroes outsiders, the accident, the loss, the tragedy, that's the exact same thing that gives them their unbelievable strength. And that's why these heroes feel so real. They're grounded. They have problems we recognize, pain we can relate to. By turning their flaws into their superpowers, they don't just ignore the uncanny, they actually transform it. They become a living, breathing bridge, showing other people how the thing that makes them feel wrong might just be their greatest gift. So this all builds to the story's critical moment. The dreamer becomes wildly successful, right? And he's invited to a theater to see his creation on the big screen. He's sitting there in the dark, watching the hero he sketched in a little room become this larger-than-life figure, more real than he ever imagined.
And that's when he feels it, that classic uncanny shiver. But it's inverted. This isn't the horror of a cheap imitation, a puppet that's not quite alive. This is the horror of an imitation that has somehow become better than the original. The hero on the screen feels more real, more vital than he, the creator, feels in his own skin.
And this highlights such a fascinating idea. There are 2 kinds of uncanny horror. There's the one we all know, right? The creepy doll with dead eyes that's not alive enough. But the dreamer experiences the second, much rarer kind, the horror of a creation that feels too alive. So alive that it makes its own creator feel like the pale imitation.
And this is where the dreamer's crisis becomes our crisis. I mean, really think about that for a second. What happens when your carefully curated online self, your perfect public persona, starts to feel more solid and more real than the actual person sitting behind the keyboard? That's the exact valley the dreamer just plummeted into.
But here's the pivot. This is the moment everything changes. He doesn't run, he doesn't leave. The theater empties out, the screen goes black, and he just sits there, on the floor. After a lifetime of climbing upward, he finally chooses to face the bottom. This is where his real journey starts. Not with a climb, but with a descent. And in that silence, it hits him. He finally gets it. The entire upward climb, the whole Excelsior thing, it was never about getting to the top. The whole point was to lead him right here to this empty theater floor. Because this is where the hero he created, the ideal he was chasing, was actually waiting for him. This is such a powerful reframe. Hitting rock bottom isn't a failure of his philosophy. It's the completion of it. You can't build a skyscraper to the heavens without a deep, solid foundation. He'd been so obsessed with building up that he completely forgot to build down. Now, finally, sitting on that floor, he is. So on that theater floor, it all clicks into place for him. First, he realizes the hero was never the destination. It was a door to walk through. Second, that whole idea of turning a wound into a power, that wasn't just a cool story idea. It's literally a description of how the true self works. And third, the entire upward climb was actually a secret map leading him right back down to this foundational, essential moment. And all of this connects him to what the story calls the absolute ish, or the absolute I.
The easiest way to think about it is it's your core self. It's not your personality or your job or your history. It's the quiet, steady witness behind all of that. It's the part of you that was there before any wound, before any mask you ever put on. It's just pure, simple awareness. It just is.
And here's the most beautiful part of the dreamer's path. All those bridges he built, all those stories he told for other people, they actually worked. It turns out the absolute itch was drawing accurate maps of the valley through him for others to use, long before his conscious mind had any clue what was going on. His art was true before he was.
And this is the most moving twist. When he finally gets to the bottom of his own valley, when he lands on that theater floor, he's not alone. The very people his stories were meant to help, they're already there. They used his maps, they crossed his bridges, and they were waiting for him to finally join them in this place he unknowingly showed them how to find. This whole experience just completely transforms him. He still creates heroes, of course, but now he does it from a place of wholeness, from the foundation up, not from a place of aspiration. The heroes he draws might look the same, but the man holding the pen is forever changed. The difference is everything. Which brings us right back to his motto. But now it has this deep, new meaning. Excelsior, ever upward. Not because the top is the goal, but because the very act of climbing, of reaching, of striving, that's how our truest self feels alive. The climb up and the foundation down aren't opposites. They're just two parts of the same beautiful dance. And so, the parable leaves us with this question. The dreamer spent his life building doors for other people. The art you make, the advice you give your friends, the support you offer your family, it's a door you're holding open. But the real question is, have you ever stopped to walk through that door yourself?